Hi everyone, this is Clare Dubois with week 3 of the Inner Journey of Awakening, which is the week of Embrace. No, it isn't. Oh, I knew I'd say that. It's the week of Embody. Reveal, embrace, embody, activate, shine, belong. This is the journey that we're on. And I'm hoping I've managed to get the camera reversed here so that we can actually look at the journey that we're on, because I want to explain again why we're doing what we're doing, because this week is crucial. This week is, in a way, it's the key that turns us towards a different future or not. And so our willingness to step in to the teachings here, to our own experience of what embodiment means, to the practices that help us come into ourselves, whatever they may be for us. When we do it en masse, when we do it together, there are over 10,000 of us on this journey now, which stuns and thrills me. That is starting to become a number that when enough of us hold particular intention at a particular time, it starts to have a strong energetic impact on ourselves. It becomes what I call the birthing circle for a new reality. So I want to explain a few things. In this map, we are basically, why are we doing an inner journey at the beginning of a tree campaign? So the behavior that we need to be doing in our world in order to bring it back to balance lives here. This is activate. This is the masculine principle in right relationship. I do wish somebody could just comment and tell me whether this is the right way around, or maybe I just can't see. Anyway, activate is the place where we have basically been willing to open to how things are, how we are, and how our bodies are, like the collective human heart and the collective human body. And so our actions are making sense in relationship to all that is. And the reality is this isn't happening. And so if we were just to say, please will everybody give money for trees, which I've been trying for the last 5 years, I've been able to look and say, okay, there's a reason why we aren't doing it. There's a reason why I've not been able to normalize this yet, even though it's the thing that makes the most sense to me and the most sense in relationship to climate change. Why is it not happening? And actually, what is the reality? The reality is our behavior over here is profound overconsumption. It's not just that we're not giving back to life, we're consuming life faster than she can actually handle herself or heal herself or regrow herself, restock her fish stocks. All of that is happening over here. And what seems very true is that the reason for this profound overconsumption that's happening here is because it's coming from a place of deficit. It's coming from a place of feeling empty, and therefore we are over-consuming to compensate for the emptiness. And then in that place of lack, energetic lack, essentially, when somebody asks you to give, you're feeling the lack. No matter how much we have more in our lives now than any generation has ever had, ever. And yet, instead of giving back more, we are taking more. So in a sense, our consumption is splitting us off more and more, and it's feeling harder and harder to be able to give back. So why? Why is this the case? And this is the case because this is the masculine principle gone out of whack. And the feminine principle, which is our ability to feel each other and the impact on each other, embrace, and our willingness to actively feel how things are. This is our indivisibility from earth. This is our body as earth. This is the root of who and what we are. When this is not embodied, here is the colossal gap in our psyches. Here is the lie that we're living, that somehow we're separate. Here is the energetic deficit of the feminine principle that's been repressed. And we don't know who and what we are. And in our not knowing, we're trying to fill up that gap with everything that we're consuming. So we're not just going straight to here on this course. We're doing this journey of trying to reinstate the feminine principle. And essentially what we're trying to do is unlock each of these places so that more energy comes into the system, because our inability to take action here in Activate is a sign of lack of energy. So if we get away from we're bad and all the judgments that we have, if there was enough energy in the system, we would be responding differently. We would be living differently. So what have we been doing? We've been trying to face truth. We've been trying to open our minds to the ability to live life as a prayer, as part of a much greater energy, as part of the cosmos, as part of something that is woven into all of life rather than separate, adding energy into the system in the week of reveal. We've been trying to live love as a choice. We've been trying to create a safety with each other, trying to build relationship, trying to strengthen through resilience and togetherness, adding energy into the system. This energy is crucial. Last week, energy so crucial, the coming together in community, because I think only in community will we have the courage to feel what is asking to be felt. This is the huge gap. This is where we have been torn away from the truth of our own nature, torn away from our nature as women, as humans. And until this is embodied, this isn't going to make any sense. So I want to give you an example of that. In the early days, when we were working with groups of women in Bristol, and we would lay out the cushions in a 5-pointed star, and we would have people sitting on them. We would basically, we would try out different configurations. What happens if there's people over here and not over there? And one day, one of my dearest friends, Trenna, who is a vegan, who won't even wear leather shoes and can't harm anything ever, sat in the place of what is called responsibility. In this map, it's called activate. It's really hard to do this because it's all reversed. So she was sat over here, which is right action in relationship with life, who we are when this is embodied. And we experimented with having nobody sitting in embody. So there was basically no consciousness in this place. The rest of it was populated with people. When we sat in that configuration with no energy in embody, she literally turned around and said, I think we should drill for oil in the Arctic. And she really meant it. Because when there was no consciousness in the place of embodiment, when there was no intimacy with life, when the consciousness that we are is lifted out of the body and lifted out of right relationship, it makes sense. You look at a lump of earth and you think, what can I do with it? And when somebody went and sat back in the place of embody, and the consciousness started to flow around the circle, which is what this map does, it starts to bring itself back into balance. She just wept. She absolutely wept, broke her heart, because she had felt the reality of our world. She had felt how you just can't make the people wrong who are drilling, who are doing these things, because for them, in a state of profound disconnection, that's what makes sense. That's what feels true. And until our collective consciousness moves back into the place of embody, moves back into our own bodies as part of nature, and we feel that, we're not going to change. So what am I asking us to do? You know, and I'm asking us to do something huge, because if this was palatable, if this was easy, we'd simply be doing it. So in a sense, if there's a whopping great gap in this flow of energy, and embody is the place where we least want to go, why? You know, what's in there? And when you think about embody, you have to think about everything that's happened to our bodies and the greater body of Earth that we simply don't want to feel. If this was easy, we'd be feeling it, but it's not. So what's in that little place there? Well, that epically big place, actually. In there is our severance from nature. That's like being ripped from mother. In there is our severance from ourselves as part of nature. So our deep sense of belonging and our sense of nature as sacred, ourselves as sacred, because as Lynn Twist and Atosa said in that amazing interview about the Amazon, when you're deeply in relationship with life, there is no external nature, because that in itself, that split, that nature is out there and we're here, is a lie. It's an untruth. It's an illusion. We are completely woven in as part of nature. In there is everything that's happened to women's bodies. In there is everything that's happened to the life givers, the sacred life givers of our species, who have been told that we're less than, in ways that are incalculably brutal if we go back to the witch burnings. In there is our being steered away from our wombs as the root of our power, our menstrual cycles being cursed, literally our indoctrination about how to separate women from each other, how to stop women being the healers, which happened in the Dark Ages and after the witch burnings, how to pull us away from our innate capacities. So in a sense, how to condition humanity to live as a lie, as a dominant species over life, which makes me want to weep as I say it. All that. And that's all our cultural conditioning. That's what's in our blood and our ancestry. Then you have to add to that everything that's happened to us in our lives this time round, which is also sitting on top of that collective mire, that collective set of fractures that is holding us apart from ourselves. So that sounds like a friggin' nightmare, and why would anybody want to feel it? Well, that is the gap between us and ourselves. That is the gap between us and our power. That is the gap between us and knowing who and what we are. And that is what prevents us from being able to swing wholeheartedly from our love of each other and our love of life into right relationship with life, into a form of living that gives back as a norm what I'm calling the restorer species, or a species that brings life and the sacredness of all life into the heart of absolutely everything that we do. Until we can feel ourselves as part of life, we're simply not going to do that. We're going to keep consuming, and we're going to keep using our planet as something out of which we can form what I'm calling like a false self, this consumer species that we are, consuming and consuming and consuming to block ourselves from feeling the reality of the gap. So I'm going to try and do another teaching here. This may or may not work, but I want to explain a fundamental truth that has been the root of my own recovery in my life from serious mental illness and physical illness. So I can say that this works for me. This may or may not be a truth for you, but I offer it to you so that you can try it on. So this is a pendulum. And in our world, I think we can all agree on the fact that a pendulum has to swing fully to one side in order to swing fully to the other side. A pendulum can't sort of swing to half and then swing back, because it gathers its momentum in the full swing. So in a sense, you could say that to have a pendulum swing further out this way, it's going to have to swing further out this way, and you can push it and it'll do an equal and opposite. So our world has made the happy feelings right, and it's made the difficult feelings wrong. And so many of us live in a state where we're constantly seeking pleasure, we're constantly seeking the good feelings, thinking that somehow that is right, and then when we sort of happen into the difficult feelings, the bad feelings, somehow that is wrong, or we're doing something wrong. My experience is that the difficult feelings are the lies that we're carrying in our nervous systems. These are the lies that essentially, through our developmental stages as children, we've had traumatic experiences, all of us, and then as children we don't have the capacity to process them. We can't resolve them or heal them unless we have exceptional parents who understand in the moment how to handle us and how to help us move a trauma through our bodies completely. Some of us have had those, a lot of us haven't had those. And so what happens is we internalize trauma, and it lays itself down in our nervous system and our bodies somehow, somewhere, depending on what actually happened to us. And then we with less of ourselves available, we try and come out into life and do life. So we're all doing this. We're all doing life as best we can. My personal experience is that in my past, what I used to do was I would live over here. I felt so inadequate in my life that I was constantly in the shit trying to figure out what it was that I was carrying that made me feel so bad, and that if I could basically just keep churning my way through this side, then eventually I'd come out this way. Until my brother said to me one day, "Claire, you're basically living in your shadow to avoid living in your light." And I realized it was a fundamental truth, and it changed my life completely, because the reality is, as I now experience it, when you live your light, when you move towards your fullness, when you open your heart, when you love as a choice, you come into your strength, you come into your fullness, and you will go as far as you possibly can, and you will build strength as you do that. And then you'll hit a limit, like you'll hit what I call an intimacy wall, or the place that is your full capacity, because we've shut ourselves down. And so life will hurl us back over here into the exact repression or trauma or fracture or whatever it is in our psyches that is the thing that is blocking us from moving further into our light. And so when you then come in to the feeling place of feeling the thing that you didn't have the capacity to process as a child, we now as adults have the capacity to sit in our pain without judgment, put our full attention there, and without pulling away from it or trying to change it or do anything with it, give it the full presence that it never had when we were young. In effect, alchemizing or dissolving it, dissolving the lie that we carry there, that we are somehow less than. And what that does is it brings you into truth, it brings you into love and intimacy, and it pushes you back over into your light. It'll push you back over into gratitude. Now, essentially what I'm saying is our capacity for love and pleasure in our life is, in my experience, defined by the capacity that I have to experience the shadow and the grief. If I'm going to avoid this, my capacity to have this experience is directly limited. If I'm going to fully go into my grief and really stretch myself over here and feel everything that is asking to be felt, I then have the equal and opposite capacity to go into my light. And so essentially, where we gather our energy, where we get access to the resources that have been hitherto unavailable to us because they're locked up in our nervous system over here, is by going in to the places where we carry pain, putting our full attention in there and allowing those fractures to come back together. This is where we come into wholeness. And in our coming into wholeness, we liberate our life force to live more full lives. So in this map, this is really difficult. In this map, one of the core truths that I found over and over again working with women is when we let ourselves feel fully here, it throws us up here into shine. And in the map of 5 choices, this is called courage. This is called intimacy. When we let ourselves have full intimacy with ourselves, our bodies, our truth, everything that we're carrying, our grief about the world, our grief about anything that we're grieving, because our grief is our love, being willing to feel a disconnect that is which is an agony, and the feeling of it is the closing of that gap and the transmuting of that agony into intimacy with self, it will throw us into our courage. And that's the pendulum swing from the perceived shadow into the light, where suddenly we have to do something. We just have to do something. Like when you fully felt how things are, you can't not take action. So the reason why the journey is as it is because we're trying to open to put more energy into the system here, which gives us more capacity to love as a choice, to get more energy in here, so that holding hands in togetherness, we can have the courage to feel the unfeelable, to feel what is asking to be felt, which is the fracture between humanity and nature as a whole being, and womankind from her power as part of nature, because our power is what is required to have us be able to change and create systems where we live in right relationship with life. And here is where we're all giving to the trees. Here is reforestation in the TreeSisters map, and this is why, as we swing from Embody to Activate, we'll move into the tree side of the campaign, because right relationship to life right now seriously looks like giving back, because we've taken and taken and taken to the point where she can't stabilize herself. Our planet is destabilizing really, really rapidly. So one of the things that I want to say is, as we move as a collective into this week, as we kind of, because there's so many of us, like there's so many of us taking this journey now. What is asking to be felt will be asking to be felt by all of us. Like life is constantly trying to come back into balance. And so those places in our psyches where we have shut down, they don't go anywhere. They're sitting waiting for the moment where there's enough strength in us to be able to present themselves so that we can come into more conscious relationship and start the job of transmuting that and coming back into wholeness. So as so many of us are doing this, there's going to be more energy for more of the shadow that we're carrying to actually start to surface. And that means we have to take extra good care of ourselves and each other. That is why with tomorrow's meditation, we're going to take so much time to build the field of support around all of us and really ask that we only get to feel what we can handle, because we're not trying to fuse anybody's system here. We're trying to help us all understand that the act of simply feeling what is asking to be felt by us, because we're sitting inside of a greater intelligence that knows what we can handle, will only give us as much as we can handle to feel. And the handling of it, even though it may feel like tears and snot and anguish and discomfort in the body and general horror, or it may not, it may feel completely ecstatic, but that's not the stuff we're frightened of. The stuff we're frightened of is feeling the feelings that we've labeled as bad. If we can depersonalize, if we can stop thinking about the difficult feelings, the uncomfortable feelings as bad, and we can feel them as a home coming back closer, closer, closer into the truth of ourselves, so that we're moving through, as we burn off those feelings by feeling them, we're moving back towards ourselves. And as you move back towards yourself, it's this poignant, achy, beautiful sort of, I call it an ecstatic agony, where you get to feel how much you've compromised yourself or denied yourself or been separate from yourself or lived a lie, or whatever it feels like, on the way through facing that, but then into the beauty of the embrace, where you come back to yourself. And when you come back to yourself, you're coming into wholeness, you're closing one of those gaps. There is the energy liberated. That energy will want to do something. It's going to want to be creative, or it may want to have you have a radical overhaul of your self-care, or it may really feel that it can no longer be in a relationship that it can't handle anymore. Because another way of looking at this map is to understand that when we fully feel our bodies, then we know how to live. And that knowing how to live includes personal boundaries. This is how we live as an individual, so that our heart is honored and our body is honored. And then when we take that to the collective, this is how we live as a species, so that humanity is honored as a whole, and our relationship to the planet and the planet is taken care of. So this is an overhaul. It's a moment where, if we allow ourselves to fully feel, life will change. And that's one of the reasons I think many of us are so afraid of feeling the truth of our situation, feeling the truth of our lives, feeling how much heartbreak we're sitting on, feeling how much untruth we're living, all of that stuff, which is just like, oh, I just don't want to look at it, because if I can just carry on living at this level. But I don't think any of us are satisfied living at a level that holds us out of truth. And we have been culturally conditioned to live out of our truth, fundamentally at the deepest possible level, that we are separate from nature. So that was an awful lot. And yeah, I hope that in there you feel some permission. I hope that there are some answers. I also want to say that those of us that can feel a huge amount are no better or worse than those people who are sitting in numbness and shock. Like, no matter where you are on the emotional scale, no matter how much you've let your pendulum swing, loads or only a little bit, you hold the alchemy for everybody that is exactly the same as you. If you're in the numb brigade, then you hold a piece for those that are numb. And there's a reason why you are that way, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's simply a reality that is asking to be changed. If you're in the angry brigade, if you're in the depressed brigade, if you're in the ecstatic brigade, if you only feel pleasure, your role is as vitally important and no better or no worse, no more evolved than those that are still sitting in real difficulty. All of us are needed, because that whole continuum exists in the whole of humanity. And as we are willing to accept ourselves as we are, which is the gift of embrace, accept ourselves as we are, be loving to ourselves as we are, then alchemy happens in that little part of the world that is our body and our psyche, and then that ripples out to everyone around us, and also everybody that holds that exact same frequency. So whatever we do, whatever we are capable of, whatever we allow ourselves to feel, whatever we allow ourselves to transmute, we're doing it for everyone. And it really, really matters. So tomorrow we gather for the embodiment meditation. This is a big one. And this is a beautiful one. This is where we step back into relationship with nature as our greater body. This is where we try and start to close that fundamental gap. And I would hope that as many of us as possible can come together. Because the more of us there are in a love field, the more the stains of the lies of our separation can simply be lifted out. They can be lifted out because they are not a truth. They do not need to stick in our nervous systems or in our consciousness anymore. So, to those of you that are new, to those of you that don't know TreeSisters, to those of you who are wondering what on earth I'm talking about, just go to billiontrees.me. I'll put the link in the chat underneath this, billiontrees.me, and go to the inner journey. This is a really crucial time to step in if you can step in. It's a beautiful time to step in. So thank you for being with me. Please share this far and wide, and hope to see you at the meditation tomorrow.